Welcome. AutoMox's For Fixate series has different topics monthly to be a source of education for those in the IT and security industry. This month, we're diving into key insights gathered from our new 2023 survey report, key inflections from 2022, and what this means to you from our panel of industry experts. I am your host and VP of Engineering at AutoMox, Cesile Johnson. With 23 years of experience in tech, my focus is enabling AutoMox engineers to design, develop, and deliver our end product. This is coupled with a specialty in enabling B2B and B2C solutions and service delivery for our customers. It is my pleasure today to introduce both Rob and Maril. Rob, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Cecily, and thank you for the opportunity to join our panel today. My name is Robert LaMagna-Reiter. I am the Vice President of Security Compliance at Hudl. I have been in the security and compliance and risk management world for going on now 18 years. And at Hudl, my team leads all security domains and guides the business through strategy, architecture, risk compliance, and really helps drive business-aligned security initiatives with a focus on ensuring all of our customers' most sensitive data remains adequately protected. And outside of Hudl, I volunteer with entities like the Cloud Security Alliance, Cyber Theory Institute, and try to contribute to the thought leadership in the zero trust space, since that's where a lot of us are headed for risk management. So pleasure to be here.
Glad you're here as well. Thank you, Rob. And last but not least, Maril.
Hi, my name is Maril Vernon. I am I was a senior security engineer. Now I'm a senior application security architect for Acquia Incorporated. We are a subcontractor providing federal services to DHS, CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I have a background as a red teamer and offensive expert. And before that, I used to work in cyber risk. So I'm one of those people with the big picture perspective on how offensive operations ties into actually moving the security needle to defend enterprises.
Excited to have you here, Maril. Thank you so much. All right, let's talk about our expert panel discussion. AutoMox surveyed nearly 500 IT professionals, and we will be asking these experts about their thoughts on our findings and industry trends that will be most impactful this year. If you haven't checked out the full report yet, it will be in your inbox later today, so be sure to dive into it this weekend. All right, let's get started. Our 2023 report shed light on some trends that have shifted since our findings last year, most significantly when it comes to the number of tools used for endpoint management, adoption of the cloud, and what is hindering effective endpoint management. Let's talk about tool overload. 2022, 60% of IT professionals say they were using over 10 tools for endpoint management. That's a lot of tools. Today, that's dropped to 20%, which is great to hear that more companies are streamlining and shedding unnecessary technologies. However, only 4% have 1 to 2 tools for endpoint management. Many teams today, and this is for the panel, many teams today have ended up with too many tools because legacy solutions lack the capabilities to manage increasingly complex environments, all within their own OSs. Third-party apps and devices are being added and removed daily. So question for you, let's start off with Rob. Do you see tool consolidation continue, or do you think many orgs are still adding tools to fill technology gaps in their portfolio?
That is a question top of mind for many IT, security, and business leaders. We're frequently seeing rationalization is probably the best term I would use to describe it, trying to align business strategy, efficacy, and trying to align spend and return on their investments in order to drive the most effective outcomes. Side effects of that are trying to balance selecting the most appropriate tool for the indicated outcome, but the trend by and large is consolidation, simplification, and how do we extract automation to increase the amount of not just productivity, but the accuracy, repeatability, and focusing our attention to the most value-added activities. So absolutely, but there's been a trend in many discussions more towards that consolidation approach, but being mindful that some organizations have limits on how fast and rapidly they can make that transition depending on where they are in either their digital transformation or IT footprint journey.
Very nice. Maril, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm personally surprised that the trend was that there was a large reduction in the use of tools. When I see a fewer number of tools, that gives me a lot of faith that things are being done correctly. Because if your solution is just to buy another tool, buy another tool, buy another tool, I'm like, you have no idea what any of these actually do and the value they're supposed to be providing, which is scary for me as a security professional. But honestly, I'm not sure if the trend downward is because of things like automation and more tools and capabilities and vendors jointly integrating. I hope so, but I think it might just be because stakeholders were saying, you got this huge security budget, you bought all these things, we're not actually sure what they do or how they helped, and then they just take budget away, which means tools have to go away. So I really hope it's the latter. I hope we continue to see a trend downwards, because again, that's a good reinforcing credibility marker for me for that organization's security program. But I'm honestly not sure. It's gonna greatly depend on whether or not they did the basics first.
I like that. I like that. It goes down, like you said, to partnerships and jointly integrating their solutions. So what do you think needs to happen for an organization to stop breaks on more solutions purchases and take a step back and understand why they can consolidate tools? Is it budgets, resources, or an executive sponsor driving this forward? And Rob, let's start with you on that one.
Okay. What we've seen is a balance of that risk tolerance, risk appetite, and a refocus on trying to identify what your business processes really do. And when you get down to it, it all comes back to the data. We've seen a shift from trying to wrap controls and insights around endpoints, infrastructure, or platforms more to where's the data live, who is accessing said data, and shifting more controls, more insight to where the data is being created and stored and processed. And so what that's doing for folks is helping them along the journey through maybe a data mapping, a data element identification. And as we know in the industry, we've seen a proliferation of the data posture security management tool sets because of the rapid and rising need to understand not only where my structured, unstructured data is, what type of data is it, and what risk does it pose to my organization in its current state, right? So I think you're seeing a shift back to folks trying to take a look at the basics, because the flip side is the tool sprawl has become more complex, unmanageable, and even when folks started looking at integrations, they are less likely to succeed with an increasing number of tool sets, versus on the flip side, where if you understand how the business operates and understand where the data resides, you can then more accurately and more closely tie in what technology to support the processes, and then leverage integration and automation that way.
I love that. Data is the core, and absolutely we need to look at how, making sure we have a single pane of glass and reduce that swivel chairing. So great feedback. I'm going to move on to our next discussion around cloud adoption. In 2022, 23% of our respondent environments were extensively cloud-based. Today, 28% of our respondents were fully cloud-based. This demonstrates that growth in full cloud adoption is slow and gradual. Panel, we've heard everything from trust issues with the cloud, cost and complexity, the smaller orgs hesitant to make the leap 100%. So Maril, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think is holding orgs back from full cloud adoption? And then we'll bring this up in our next topic as well, but wanted to really just start talking about, what you think about that from cloud cost, hybrid environments, cloud native, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it does go back to cloud education. It's just that nobody understands the cloud. At one of the first organizations I ever worked at, the cloud architect, the guy who was literally educating our IT operations and integration personnel on how to migrate us to the cloud, didn't have as much cloud knowledge as I had. Like I as the hacker had more cloud certifications and knowledge than he did. And I think it's an education problem because so many organizations are trying to directly translate what they have on-prem into cloud environments, and they're not starting cloud native to begin with because they don't understand the architecture and the topography. So I think the more that we just kind of unlearn what we know and figure out how to start properly with cloud native services and capabilities, the better cloud environments will be. And then distrust of the cloud goes away, right? Because it's not a mercurial, nebulous cloud of things you don't understand and controls in places you don't know where to turn them on. You know very deeply, all the way down to that cloud networking level, at that infrastructure level, where your controls are, where you can control your environment, where the integrations are, how they communicate. And that's what's going to equal more cloud success.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much. Rob, what do you think about this?
I'm not sure how many of our listeners can recall back to the days where the legacy telcos controlled most of the communication. You had organizations that leaned on third parties to go through the charges that were listed that an AT&T or other national carrier would bill organizations for transmission over those old phone lines. We're seeing that problem at a much larger scale with the cloud, primarily because of what Maril just talked about, the disconnect between what optimal usage of cloud native and cloud technologies means versus the comfort and knowledge that organizations have over traditional IT. There is a path forward to simplifying and extracting the correct cloud value, but you have to understand what the business's objectives truly are. If it's agility and if it's true, resiliency and being able to do, increasingly more amounts of iterative improvement with less ambiguity, fantastic. But if it's simply cost cutting, then you really need to analyze and understand what you're trying to do. Sometimes find the right partners or scaling up internally to be cognizant of what you do, or else you might find yourself in an increasing large number of organizations that move to the cloud and then have to exit the cloud as well, because they didn't quite understand what they were getting into in the first place.
It's a great, very good feedback. Thank you from our panelists. I'm going to move on to our next challenge, and that is the challenge to perform endpoint management. 2022, staffing shortages were cited as the #1 impediment of performing essential endpoint management functions. Today, this similar category, saving on IT ops resources, is now ranking #5, with security and needing more control now listed as our top 2 concerns. For this next panel question, I want us to focus on with our current economic client. The staffing issue has gone away, so why the switch to security and control as something that is now more important to IT when managing endpoints? Security is always in the forefront of all organizations, so that there's no surprise, especially with the new vulnerabilities and exploits at our door. But I am interested in the control IT is looking for. So Maril, what do you think is causing IT to feel they are not in control of the management of their endpoints?
I don't know how many people out there are going to agree with me, but as someone who helps publish benchmarks for CIS, the Center for Internet Security, I'm going to say that it's doing the basics. If you haven't done the CIS first 6, then you really have no business doing things like booking pen tests and like doing higher echelons of graduated self-assessment and vulnerability assessment. It's that most organizations don't have control over their assets, asset management, their licenses, license management. Like you've got 10 versions of Adobe running rampant in any given environment. So we're not doing the very basics first. We're like skipping ahead several steps to like really sophisticated managed solutions. And it's like they can't manage things for you that you can't tell them what to manage. If you don't know there are rogue assets on your network, if you don't know what all the endpoints are and what version of everything they're running, if you don't know if you have out of compliance endpoints running, then an endpoint detection and response solution is not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to that problem.
Excellent. Hey, Rob, what do you define as a high level of control over one's endpoints?
A high level of control is having the visibility, as Maril mentioned, over the the access, so the ingress and egress to where the endpoints are accessing the data. So you know at a high level what data might or might not reside on those endpoints and who is leveraging and using those endpoints. And that's why it's gotten so complex, because as Maril correctly called out, we've lost sight of that visibility as the number one prerequisite to defining our policies and standards that then IT and security can partner to figure out what and how do we, one, control, maintain, two, visibility, and three, with the rapidly changing world where you have privacy regulations now coming out and adding another layer of checks and balances, the data may not be able to reside out of certain geographies, and where are my endpoints traveling, and what exactly is an endpoint, right? I think the definition of endpoint continues to evolve and change, where now you have a whole host that you do not have the ability to control. So again, focusing on what you can do about the data and focusing on solid process, we've gotten lost in the shuffle and trying to find solutions to give us the illusion of control, which has caused us to stumble into mediocrity.
I'm hearing a theme of data through all these discussions, and this is great. Let's move into our 2023 top takeaways. As the last slide suggested, even in a short span of time, 22 through 23, we see industry shifts occurring very fast. But what about 2023 specifically? As we dive more into the new year, we wanted to highlight our most notable industry trends. This includes the economy, and its impact on IT. The theme of trust as it relates to both integrations and automations, as well as where many organizations on the journey to full automation. Here we go. Economic impacts on IT. We've learned that current economic climate is a concern for IT, with over half our respondents worrying about reduced budgets, especially if the economic climate becomes more challenging. Panel discussion, Rob, we'll start with you. Similar to our survey, do you think IT teams are feeling much of the economic downturn yet in 2023, and how are they responding?
I think in certain verticals, obviously, we're feeling the effects more than others. It's causing folks to go back to that mindset that you need to operate under a notion of self-imposed scarcity. And what I mean by that is we need to challenge, are we working on the correct high value activities that are prioritized with business alignments? We could be working on the correct things, but are we doing them in the correct manner? So you take, for example, automation. Not all automation or integration activities have the same benefit back to the business. So you truly need to understand what you're delivering, the priority, how it's enabling either the customer experience or sales, revenue, or business resiliency, whatever you're tasked with supporting. I think the economic environment is going to cause folks to become more deliberate about how intentional they are focusing on those, and really cutting out hobby projects to focus on the core delivery of the business.
Excellent. Mara, what do you think?
I think that, as budgets continue to reduce for whatever reason, whether industry revenue is down, whether, certain video conferencing that became big households names are now reverting with like the somewhat return to work movement. Whatever the reason is, we're going to feel it definitely, because IT jobs are usually the first ones to disappear. A lot of organizations take the philosophy that it's much easier to simply outsource a service, like consume something on a SaaS basis, like IT management services, rather than staff them in-house full time. And we're going to see a big problem as a result of that, because with the more third parties managing your data, we've seen an uptick in supply chain attacks already. You have a larger attack surface and less control, again, over who controls your data and how they treat it. And are their controls up to your controls? And the more we start cutting budgets and outsourcing things like that, we're going to feel it, like Rob mentioned, in pretty much all verticals across IT operations and cybersecurity.
Very insightful. Thank you. Trust and integrations. We talked about tool overload in our last slide. This is a real issue as companies acquire new tech to address issues or gaps leading to tool sprawl. Integrations are an effective way to consolidate your tools, provide a seamless IT experience, as well as increase ROI. We all love to increase our ROI. Through your own experiences in talking to colleagues, where did you think most IT orgs stand in regards to integrations? Are integrations a top priority, just on their radar, or maybe just something else? And how would you recommend our attendees do research in identifying integrations on the matter to how it affects their org and how should they be involved. So we've got two questions here. Maril, do you want to go ahead and just start with one of those? We can start with the first one through our experiences.
Yeah. So do you want me to read the question?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Through your own experiences and when talking to colleagues, where do you think most IT orgs stand in regards to integrations? Are they a top priority? Are they just on the radar, or maybe something else? And I think that integrations are seen as very attractive because it's like, whereas you have 2 or 3 homegrown or possibly other outsourced solutions, we can provide you all of that in one shop. But I get wary of people who offer too many services as like a one-stop thing, because I don't really think that's actually good rhetoric, because if you're doing everything, I feel like you're not specializing in any one of those things. Like if you try to defend everything, you're defending nothing. It's good to start small and niche down and really identify capabilities that a certain vendor or integration can address and help with. And I also think that customers have to understand what they hope to get out of that. What is it you're hoping to gain? What coverage or capability or information is it that you're hoping to get every time you come to these people? And can they actively provide that to you? You need to assess timeliness, completeness, retention, all these things if you're going to be trusting them with a piece of that for you. And so I think a lot of people just want to do a handoff to a vendor with a big jazzy integration and think that they have no role left to play in that shared responsibility model. They don't realize the ongoing maintenance is also a job that you have as the customer.
Great, thank you, Maril. Rob, what do you think about this? IT, orgs stand in regards with immigrations. Is it their top priority right now, or is it just on their radar?
I'm going to use the typical sidestep the question, say it's a little bit of both, but to build on and add value to the conversation, I'm going to focus a little bit on a couple of things. One, I think we can all agree on that if a vendor or partner stops after they articulate that we have an open API and you can be as custom, you can customize to your heart's content, you should run, because they're not focusing on delivering what that true integration means to you, right? When you're doing your research and you're identifying specific use cases, an open API does you no good if you don't understand the context in which the information is coming out, how it's structured, how it's going to be broken down and used, how it's being transmitted in the first place. Not all integrations are secure. Are you counting on the output or inputs staying constant and static despite upgrades on the solutions or enhancements on the solutions that we'll see iterative improvements, right? So as solutions become more feature rich, as solution providers release updates on schedules in which you cannot opt out of release management, for example, with a lot of SaaS applications, your integrations might break. So are you prepared for that as well? Or can your partner step in and help you understand and translate how your business processes may or may not be impacted? There are all of these things that you need to think about at a very basic process level. We try to, I think a constant theme we've talked about today is trying to jump towards the end and solutioning and trying to show the business value. And we're not spending enough time on outlining what are our success criteria? How are we going to judge whether this makes sense or not? How are we going to reset expectations and stop short of just integrating shelfware versus integrating efficiency?
I think, Rob, I love it when people just say, we have an open API and stop. We're like, great, that is not information.
I like that. So what is the what and what is the why? It's good. All right, trust and automation. Trust and automation is growing. To get more done with fewer resources, most IT teams understand the need for and have adopted automation. In fact, in our 2023 study, 64% of IT professionals always or are often trust automation. So panel question. From a separate study, we've heard that a 2023 priority will be moving IT to higher value work. Do you think automation will be the solution to address this priority, or perhaps other technologies such as AI and ML, or maybe a blended technology stack? Maril?
I'm so glad you picked me first. I have people telling me all the time that as a hacker, as a pen tester, my job is going to go away soon. AI is going to come in and be able to do all the things that I do with Kali and Nmap and all those things. And that's true. That's very true. And we as successful red teamers should try to automate as much as possible. And I believe this for any IT capability or function. we do want to automate as much as possible, right? Because that's more time we can spend getting creative with our job, doing that manual validation, seeing how we can get more creative and use our human thinking capabilities to go beyond what the machine can do. Because you still have to teach the machine what to do, what to look for, and how to do it. And it's only going to do those given set of instructions like a cron job every day, right? But we, the humans, are able to synthesize and integrate and innovate. And so I always believe in a blended tech stack. I always believe that automation will play its role, and you should leverage it, because you shouldn't be doing certain repetitive tasks with 90% of your time, but you should spend maybe 10-15% of your time maintaining those, and the rest of your time being creative with your job and reaching out and cross collaborating and cross pollinating and data sharing and educating and stuff like that. And that is something that AI will never be able to do, because tech at the end of the day is still a human industry. We're still humans working in it.
I love that you say creativity and working together. That's awesome. Rob, I'm going to move to the next question for you. Along the thread of trust, in this case, trust in automation, do you think the importance of trust in automation is growing more out of A, new IT employees learning to trust new automations, or B, IT veterans who have been poor automations and have lost trust through these experience, or maybe something else?
I think that you're going to see a blended evolution in the trust and automations. The more we get comfortable with the expected outputs and learn how we can, I'm going to steal this. We all need to become better hackers ourselves. And what I mean by that is we need to hack the automation itself. The automation goes stagnant pretty quick. And so you're going to see over time, both newcomers to IT and security and veterans have to think about what's the most effective way to hack inquiries to AI technologies, whether it is large language models that everybody's been playing with from a, like an OpenAI solution standpoint, or if it's AI ML ingested into tool sets. As we mentioned, they lack creativity, they lack exploring the bounds. The most successful IT and security professionals are going to push those language models and algorithms to their boundaries and hopefully spur them to do things above and beyond what they were originally designed for. And that's going to deliver the true value, trust in automation, that we can control the direction in which automation is going. But at the same time, you need to also leverage that to detect how potentially nefarious actors are doing the same thing, because they've been working on it for a while. You just haven't identified it yet, or you don't know you've been a target, right? That's going to become more prevalent, and it's going to scale at such a pace that unless we get comfortable with operating under some of those same mentalities, we're going to be doing ourselves a larger disservice.
I agree. I think when it comes to AI and machine learning and automation, you get what you inspect, not what you expect. It's not unlike when you hear about anomalous EDR or like SIM solutions. It's like, we detect anomalous behavior. It's like, what is that based on? Is it based on a dilib, a dynamic library that's going to be updating from somewhere on the internet? Is it based on a baseline? Like, it's still learning off of something. And almost the minute that real-time alert is updated, it's out of date because something in the environment is already changing. So I love automation, but I have a healthy mistrust of where they're getting their information and basing their results off of, because almost the second you get something integrated, it's already on its way to being deprecated. Its news is already becoming old. So I think we'll trust it more the more we validate and, again, inspect, and not just hope and pray that we're getting what we thought we were getting.
Very good. Validation is key. Along the same lines, IT is moving towards fully automating endpoint management, but most aren't there yet. Only 23% of organizations have fully automated endpoint management, but 77% say they are at least mostly automated. Automation can bring much to the table in terms of efficiency and agility, but adopting automation is another story. Panel, what do you think is holding organizations back from taking an automated approach, not just endpoint management, but the automation of IT processes in general? Rob?
I feel like I'm going to be stuck in a little bit of a Groundhog Day here, recycling some of the themes we talked about earlier when we talk about visibility, process, and expectations. I think that's what it is. Organizations, the ones that are able to accomplish a high degree of endpoint automation, automated management, and so forth, understand what their success criteria looks like. They understand what their objectives are, and they're able to tie that back to a good enough MVP on whether you call it data or asset management or visibility. The ones that struggle and continue to struggle, do not quite know where they should start, and so it's hard to iteratively improve and get to higher efficacy or consumption levels. It seems more complex than it really is. A lot of the times, it's just the hard work and analysis up front to make sure that it can scale.
Maril?
I think one step beyond that, many orgs, once they have stood up a piece of automation, such as in the cloud with like automatic scaling of EC2 instances, are unwilling to do the stress test. They don't want to find out if it's going to fail. They want to just hope that the rules they've set up and the things are, again, Terraform things are working the way that they should be. So I think the more that we enable people to perform those tests, even in controlled dev environments or outside of working hours asynchronously, the more we're going to come from a place of definitive knowledge rather than theorized and hopeful stances. So I think that more trust with automation will come the more we actually put these things to the test.
Yeah, and I would say building even more upon what Maril just said, not only having pushing the boundaries and identifying that Terraform is a good example, or testing within different environments is a good example. Taking that one step further in that shared responsibility model that Maril mentioned earlier, availability zones and elasticity and scaling and business recovery, they're different concepts. And unfortunately, we have a lot of folks that mix understanding what availability zones and true elasticity really means. And so folks need to understand what that means in the concept and definition of either specific automation or enterprise automation. So just something for our listeners to take away, be cognizant of as they're scaling their cloud architectures.
And to riff off that, that's a perfect point to what we spoke to earlier about translating on-prem schools of thought into the cloud. On-prem, you want everything as controlled as possible. You want everything in the same place. You want to be able to control it and get to terminal as fast as possible. But in the cloud, you want to be in multiple availability zones, multiple regions, multiple AZs within that region. You want to be in multiple clouds even, because then if one goes down, you are not dependent upon that cloud. But cloud resiliency is a completely different architecture beast than on-prem resiliency.
I am so glad you ended with that. Redundancy is key. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Maril and Rob. Our expert panel discussion was awesome today. Thank you so much. I'm now going to signal the speakers to hop into their sessions while I wrap up with the rest of the audience today. We have 2 sessions today for you. Rob's session, you'll listen to Rob's breakout session to better understand Zero Trust framework and how learning into the KISS principle will help you simplify, consolidate, and automate your processes. Maril, you'll listen to Maril's session to see the benefits of the Purple Team to reduce silos and increase overall cyber resiliency. Very exciting. As the host, I want to personally thank you for joining and taking the time with us. Have a great day.